Misty dawn crawled over the ancient pines of Olympic National Park, turning the forest floor to shifting silver. Jessica Collins stood beneath the weight of that hush, her boots pressed into spongy moss, her breath clouding in the chilled air. To anyone watching, she was the embodiment of control. 34 years old, senior park ranger, her brown hair pulled back in a no-nonsense braid, uniform crisp, shoulders squared. But inside, the silence was unsettling, worming its way under her skin. Rex, the German shepherd at her side, moved with her, alert, always in tune with Jessica's moods. He was no ordinary dog, military trained, scar along his right ear, eyes sharp enough to catch even the smallest tremor in the undergrowth. They made their morning rounds together, always before the tourists woke, always before the world broke open. Jessica trusted Rex more than she trusted most people, maybe more than she trusted herself. Today, though, something was wrong. It was subtle at first. The birds were quieter, the wind holding its breath. Jessica's hand went unconsciously to the radio at her hip, thumb hovering, but she said nothing. She'd learned over the years to trust her instincts, but never to panic. Panic got people killed. Still, as they moved deeper into the woods, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, that she was not alone. Rex froze. One moment he was pacing at her side. The next he was a statue, ears pricked, hackles raised, nose lifted to the damp air. Jessica stopped dead, her heart thudding loud enough to echo in her own ears. She knew this signal. Rex didn't spook easily. Whatever he sensed wasn't a deer or a lost camper. Something about the stillness, the way it pressed in from all sides, made Jessica's skin crawl. She crouched, one hand dropping to Rex's collar, her voice barely above a whisper. "Easy, boy. What is it?" Rex didn't move. His eyes darted left, then right, searching the shadows between the ferns. Jessica's nerves sang with adrenaline. She looked around, her mind already mapping the area, every trail, every hiding spot. She'd patrolled these woods for years, but right now they felt like a stranger's hands closing in around her throat. Then, snap, a sharp, unnatural noise ripped through the trees, shattering the hush. Jessica's muscles tensed. She reached instinctively for the small sidearm at her hip, not yet drawing it, just feeling the reassuring weight. Rex lunged forward, a low growl vibrating in his chest, dragging Jessica with him before she could react. Branches whipped at her face, the ground uneven, but Rex moved with desperate purpose. It was as if he were being pulled by something urgent and invisible. Jessica's thoughts spun. Could it be a bear? A poacher? She'd had run-ins before, but never like this. The forest no longer felt like her sanctuary. It felt hostile, every shadow threatening, every sound loaded with meaning. And beneath it all, a darker fear gnawed at her. What if this wasn't random? What if her past, those secrets she had buried so deep even Rex couldn't sniff them out, had finally caught up to her? What if she had been found? The sound came again. Closer this time, a ragged, desperate cry cut short. Rex bolted, and Jessica stumbled after him, barely keeping pace as they plunged through the thick tangle of branches and mist. Her mind flashed with images from years ago. A different night. A different forest. A moment of hesitation that cost someone their life. She had sworn never to freeze again. Suddenly, the ground dipped, and Jessica slid into a small hollow, Rex barking wildly. The woods were so dense here, the light so thin, it felt like stepping into another world. A world built from secrets and dread. Jessica's breath caught. Her pulse was a drumbeat. Her vision narrowed. This was supposed to be her place, her domain. But in that moment, surrounded by trees that had stood for centuries, Jessica Collins felt like a trespasser in her own life. Rex whined, pawing at the earth, refusing to go farther. Jessica knelt beside him, fingers trembling as she scanned the undergrowth. The air was thick with the metallic tang of fear. She forced herself to slow her breathing, to push back the memories clawing at the edges of her mind. She was not that person anymore. She wouldn't let herself be. But the question pressed in. What was out there, and what did it want? Jessica reached for her radio, but before she could press the button, a scream echoed. High, strangled, unmistakably human. It was close, far too close. For a heartbeat, Jessica's calm exterior cracked, her fears spilling into the open. She saw not just the danger, but the possibility, the nightmare, that someone needed her, right now, and she might be too late. She squeezed Rex's collar. "Let's go," she whispered, her voice steely now, purpose burning away the fear. The past was gone. This was now, and whatever waited in the shadows, she would face it head-on, with Rex by her side, and the courage she thought she'd lost long ago. With one last look at the haunted trees, Jessica plunged into the unknown. Jessica's boots pounded the forest floor, kicking up damp leaves as Rex charged ahead, his bark urgent, wild with instinct. The scream echoed again, hoarse, cut short, full of pain. Jessica ducked under a low branch, adrenaline burning away the last traces of sleep and fear. Every nerve in her body was electric. The woods swallowed her up, branches snatching at her sleeves, fog swirling around her ankles like ghostly hands. She was running blind, trusting Rex to guide her, every sense strained for any sign of what lay ahead. Rex skidded to a stop just short of a small clearing, body low, teeth bared. Jessica nearly collided with him, bracing herself on his thick fur. The world slowed down for a heartbeat, sound muffled by the mist. Then she saw it. A woman hung upside down from a thick pine branch, rope biting into her ankles, blood streaking her arms and face. Her shirt was torn, her breath shallow, chest heaving. Long brown hair tangled with twigs swung with every twitch. Jessica's heart slammed in her chest. She'd seen violence before, but this was different. This was deliberate, cruel, and fresh. The woman's eyes fluttered open, pupils dilated with terror. She tried to speak, but only a raw, broken sound came out. "Rex, stay!" Jessica's voice shook. She scanned the clearing, every instinct screaming for her to move, but she had to check for danger first. Rex circled, nose to the ground, hackles raised, body blocking Jessica and the woman from the thickest shadows. Jessica's hands flew as she pulled out her pocket knife. She kept one eye on the trees while slicing through the rope. The woman dropped like a sack of grain. Jessica caught her just in time, easing her onto the mossy ground. Up close, she could see bruises blooming along the woman's jaw and arms, a shallow cut along her temple leaking blood into her hair. The woman was alive, barely, but her body trembled with shock. "Hey, look at me, stay with me." "What's your name?" Jessica murmured, trying to keep her voice steady. She ripped open a packet from her vest and pressed a gauze pad to the bleeding cut, hands moving on autopilot. The woman's lips moved. Jessica leaned in. Maria Sanders." Jessica's mind raced. Maria Sanders. She knew that name, an environmental activist who'd been in the news, always protesting logging, always in the thick of local controversies. What was she doing out here alone, strung up like a warning? "Who did this to you?" Jessica whispered, glancing over her shoulder. The forest pressed in, silent and watchful. Maria's eyes went wide, flicking over Jessica's shoulder into the woods. Rex growled, a deep, bone-shaking sound. He positioned himself between Jessica, Maria, and the black mouth of the forest. Jessica saw it then. A flicker of movement behind the trees, too quick for details, but enough to turn her blood to ice. Suddenly, a guttural voice boomed from the thicket. "You shouldn't have come here." There was a crack. Gunfire. Bark exploded from the trunk inches above Jessica's head. She threw herself over Maria, heart hammering, Rex barking furiously as bullets tore through the branches. "Move!" Jessica hissed, yanking Maria to her feet. Maria's legs folded, barely able to hold her. Jessica wrapped an arm around her waist, dragging her toward the far side of the clearing, using a fallen log as cover. Rex stayed close, his body low, eyes darting for any sign of the shooter. "Stay down!" Jessica pressed Maria to the ground. Her mind raced. She needed backup, but radioing now would give away their position. The woods fell silent except for the heavy gasps of breath and the distant creak of a swinging rope. Rex's bark was cut short by a sudden snap in the brush. Another shot, this time closer, whistling past Jessica's shoulder. She forced herself not to flinch. "Rex, heal!" she called, voice tight with fear and fury. Rex darted to her side, eyes blazing, every muscle quivering with restrained energy. Maria clawed at Jessica's sleeve. Don't leave me, please. He said he'd come back. Said I'd die out here like the others." Jessica felt her pulse pounding in her temples. "I'm not leaving you, okay? I promise." She glanced down. Maria was bleeding from a deep cut on her forearm. Jessica ripped off her own sleeve, tying it around Maria's arm in a makeshift bandage. Her hands shook, but her voice stayed firm. "You're safe. I need you to be quiet. Can you do that for me?" Maria nodded, tears streaking her dirty cheeks. A branch cracked nearby, closer, heavier. Jessica drew her sidearm, sighting along the barrel, scanning the trees. Rex pressed against Maria, his body vibrating with a low, warning growl. Jessica shifted, eyes searching for a way out. A path, any break in the undergrowth. Then, out of nowhere, another voice, a man, angry, slurred with rage, yelled, "You're dead, Collins! You and your little dog, too!" Jessica's heart dropped. He knew her name. This wasn't random. She fired a warning shot into the air. "Leave now! This is federal land! You're outgunned and outnumbered!" No reply. The forest went dead silent. Jessica dragged Maria to her feet. "Rex, with me." They zigzagged through the underbrush, keeping low, every step a prayer. Shots rang out behind them, bullets tearing bark and leaves. Jessica moved on instinct, her mind a blur of tactics and terror. She'd failed once before. She would not fail again. They reached a thicket, dropping to their knees. Maria sobbed quietly. Jessica scanned Maria's face, searching for consciousness. "Stay with me, Maria. Tell me, why are they after you?" Maria shook her head, lips bloodless. "Not just me. People like you, rangers, anyone who stands in their way." A chill raced up Jessica's spine. Rex licked Maria's hand, grounding her, as Jessica fought down memories that threatened to paralyze her. "Not now. Not this time." "Listen to me, Mariah," Jessica whispered. "We're getting out of here, I swear it." A distant siren. Maybe hope, maybe another trap. Jessica gritted her teeth, heart thudding with determination. Whatever evil lurked in these woods, she would face it, with Rex, and with every ounce of courage she had left. Jessica's boots were caked with mud by the time she guided Maria and Rex through a tangle of brambles and broken undergrowth. The gunfire had faded, replaced by the heavy, breathless silence of the forest. Their path twisted between towering pines, away from the blood-stained clearing and into the wild heart of Olympic National Park. Fog curled around their ankles, swallowing their footsteps, hiding them from anything or anyone that might be searching. After what felt like an eternity, Jessica spotted the squat shape of an abandoned ranger station, half swallowed by moss and ferns. Relief, sharp as a knife, punched through her exhaustion. "We'll rest here," she said, half to herself, half to Maria, whose body was nearly limp in her arms. Rex trotted ahead, nosing the warped door. His fur was bristling, but he didn't growl. No immediate threat inside, then. Jessica pushed through, guiding Maria onto a rickety bench. The little shack was cold and damp, but its walls kept out the wind and muffled the sounds of the outside world. For a few moments, the chaos felt far away. Jessica dug into the emergency supplies stashed in a dusty cabinet, old, but still usable. She set out gauze, a cracked canteen, an ancient first aid kit. Her hands were trembling. She forced herself to breathe, to move with purpose. The metallic scent of Maria's blood mixed with the earthy smell of rot and pine. "Here, let me—" Jessica's words trailed off. She soaked a rag with water and wiped blood from Maria's face, inspecting the bruises and shallow cuts. Maria hissed in pain, but didn't pull away. Her eyes, huge and haunted, followed Jessica's every move. Jessica worked quickly, patching wounds, wrapping bandages tight but not cruel. When she finished, she slumped onto the floor, her back against the wall. Her hands shook. The weight of what just happened crashed into her. She'd almost been killed, again. She'd almost failed, again. Rex patted over, nuzzling Jessica's shoulder. She closed her eyes, letting the steady, living warmth of the dog ground her. For a while there was nothing but the hush of the shack and the soft click of Rex's claws on old wood. "You're a park ranger?" Maria's voice was a hoarse whisper. Jessica opened her eyes, nodding. "Senior ranger. Name's Jessica Collins." Maria managed a weak, crooked smile. "You saved my life." She wiped a shaky hand across her eyes. "You shouldn't have. They'll come after you, too." Jessica shook her head, jaw set. "I couldn't leave you there. I won't let anyone die on my watch." The words came out harder than she meant. Her mind spun with old images. Faces she couldn't save. Moments where she hesitated. Where fear won out over action. Maria let the silence stretch before she spoke again. "You ever feel like the forest is watching you? Like someone's always 2 steps behind?" Jessica's heart thudded. She looked at Maria, saw the same haunted look she'd glimpsed in her own mirror. "Sometimes," she admitted. "I know these woods better than anyone. But today it feels different. Like there's something out there I can't see. Something that wants us gone." Maria nodded, swallowing hard. "They're organized. They have people everywhere, cameras, radios. They watch the activists, the rangers, anyone who tries to protect this place. I tried to warn the others, but nobody believed me." Jessica studied Maria's face. "Who are they? Why target you?" Maria shivered, eyes darting to the dirty window. "I found something I wasn't supposed to. Logging contracts, payoffs, threats, rangers taking money to look the other way. I sent the files to a journalist. Then, this started. People disappearing, warnings left in the trees. Then this morning, they grabbed me." Rex pressed his nose to Maria's hand. She jumped, then let him stay. For the first time, Jessica saw Maria's tough exterior crumble. A girl not much older than her own sister had been, alone, terrified, hunted. Jessica reached for the canteen, handed it to Maria, then turned away, staring at the wall. Her mind churned with old guilt, old secrets, her own failures, the night she'd frozen, the life she hadn't been able to save. She tried to bury the memories, but Maria's terror brought them all flooding back. "Sometimes I think I shouldn't be here," Jessica said quietly. Sometimes I think the forest would be safer if I just left. But then I remember, someone has to stay. Someone has to fight. Rex pressed close, warm and steady. Jessica stroked his fur, feeling her hands calm. Rex keeps me going, she murmured. He always knows when I'm about to break. He never leaves. Maria took a trembling breath. I'm so tired of running, so tired of hiding. I thought if I just exposed the truth, it would be enough. I never thought they'd come after me like this. Jessica turned back, her voice gentle. You're safe for now. We'll find a way out. But I need to know everything, every detail. Can you trust me with that? Maria hesitated. I think so. I have a backup copy, hidden. If anything happens to me. A noise outside. Both women went silent, staring at the door. Rex stood, body tense, growl low in his throat. Jessica's hand slid to her sidearm. Footsteps crunched in the leaves. The shack's walls felt thin as paper. Maria pressed back, eyes wide. Jessica motioned for silence, but then, nothing. The footsteps faded. Jessica held her breath until she was sure the danger had passed. For a long time they sat in silence, listening to the forest breathe. Jessica let herself lean into the moment, feeling the weight of Maria's trust, Rex's presence, the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, they could survive the night. And for the first time since it all began, Jessica allowed herself to be vulnerable, just for a heartbeat. She was not alone. Not now, not with Rex and Maria. Maybe that was enough to keep fighting. A slow, gray morning bled through cracks in the window, casting shadows that flickered across the battered ranger station walls. Jessica lay against the wooden planks, her head tipped back, one hand resting lightly on Rex's flank. Every muscle in her body ached, but sleep wouldn't come. Not with Maria's ragged breathing in the dark and the memory of gunshots still ringing in her ears. Rex was the first to notice the change, a sharp, bristling alertness. He lifted his head, nostrils flaring, body tense. Jessica's hand froze, fingers digging into the dog's fur. The forest outside felt close again, as if danger was pressing its nose to the glass. A branch cracked, then a clumsy footfall. Someone was coming, and they weren't trying hard to be quiet. Jessica moved instantly, raising her sidearm, her body shielded between Maria and the door. "Stay back," she hissed. Maria pressed herself against the far wall, clutching a broken chair leg with white-knuckled desperation. Rex let out a warning growl, low and guttural. The door burst open, and a young man stumbled inside, breathless, rain slicking his blonde hair to his forehead. "Don't shoot! It's me, Chris!" he gasped, both hands up. Jessica lowered her weapon a fraction, but didn't step aside. "Chris Bailey?" She recognized the rookie's face from orientation. Late 20s, clean cut, eager to prove himself, but greener than spring moss. She hadn't expected him out here. Not in this mess. Chris's eyes darted from Jessica's drawn weapon to Maria's battered face, then to Rex, who stood between them all, muscles coiled to pounce. "What happened?" Chris blurted out, trying and failing to sound braver than he felt. Jessica didn't answer at first. Instead, she kept her focus on the doorway, scanning for signs of pursuit. "How did you find us?" she demanded, voice flat and cold. Chris swallowed hard, wringing water from his sleeves. "I saw the gunfire. Heard yelling. I was doing perimeter checks, then saw someone running. Figured you'd head for shelter." He looked around, anxiety flickering across his features. "Are you okay? Is that blood?" "It's not mine," Jessica said, voice sharper than she intended. "Close the door, quietly." She motioned Chris inside, locking the battered door behind him. Maria eyed him with a blend of hope and suspicion, shrinking farther into the shadows. Rex circled, sniffing Chris from head to toe, tail stiff. For a moment, the only sound was the dog's measured breathing and the drip of rain from Chris's boots. Jessica studied Chris's face, searching for signs. Nervousness, guilt, deceit. The memory of Maria's whispered warning rang in her head. There are cameras, traitors, even among the rangers. She wanted to trust him, but too much was at stake. Chris finally broke the silence. What the hell is going on, Jessica? His voice cracked. Real fear, not just rookie nerves. First that gunshot last night, now this. Who's she? He nodded at Maria, whose eyes darted away. She's a witness, Jessica said, choosing her words carefully. She was attacked. We're in danger. Someone's after both of us. She fixed Chris with a steely stare. You saw anyone else? Any sign you were followed? Chris shook his head. Just me, I swear. The woods felt wrong, though. Like being watched. Maria's voice was a whisper. Because we are. The words hung in the air, a chilling truth that needed no explanation. Jessica caught Chris's eye, warning him off with a subtle shake of her head. He nodded, understanding enough to stop asking. Rex paced the room, restless, circling close to Maria, then back to Jessica, as if counting his flock. He pressed his head into Maria's lap, earning a weak, grateful smile. His presence calmed the room, made the battered shack feel almost safe, for now. Chris sat heavily on a crate, running both hands through his hair. I signed up to help people, not to get shot at, he muttered, voice cracking. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. Jessica crouched beside him, the tension in her shoulders easing just a little. Nobody ever is, Chris. Not until it happens. Fear means you care. Means you're alive. Her voice wavered, just enough for him to notice. I'm not afraid for myself. I'm afraid for the people I'm supposed to protect. Chris looked up, surprised by her honesty. You? Afraid? He tried to joke, but it came out flat. You're the toughest ranger here. Jessica almost laughed. Almost. Tough doesn't mean bulletproof. I've lost people before. I'm not doing that again. Maria's eyes filled with tears. She wiped them away, fiercely embarrassed. You don't have to stay, either of you. They said, if I ever told anyone, they'd come after them too. Jessica shook her head, gentle but firm. We're already in this, Maria. We're not leaving you behind. Her gaze flickered to Chris, who gave a shaky but determined nod. A sudden realization hit Jessica. She trusted these two. Maybe not fully, not yet, but enough to share the fear that was gnawing at her insides. Maybe that's what survival meant now. Not going it alone, but facing the dark together, however flawed or frightened they were. Then, quietly, Maria whispered, They're watching us right now. There are cameras in the trees. I saw one last night. Red light blinking. Not just poachers, rangers too. They have people everywhere. Jessica felt a cold dread settle in her gut. She glanced at the corners of the cabin, at the seams between wallboards, suddenly suspicious of every dark knot and hole. Rex circled back, whining, pressing his big head against her leg. Chris stood, hands balled into fists. So what do we do? He asked, voice trembling but strong. Jessica looked at them, her broken, scared, brave little group, and made a choice. We keep moving. We stay together. We trust each other, at least until we can't. She holstered her weapon and scratched Rex behind the ear, drawing calm from his steady heartbeat. Outside, the wind rattled the shack. Danger lurked in every shadow, but inside, for the first time since dawn, Jessica felt a fragile thread of hope. Maybe that would be enough. The weak sunlight faded quickly behind a veil of mist, turning the ranger station into an island of shadow. Inside, Jessica scanned the room, every muscle coiled. She forced herself to listen, to sense, to trust Rex's instincts more than her own nerves. Maria clung to the bench, eyes darting, while Chris fidgeted by the boarded window, desperately peering into the gloom. A distant thump, then another. Jessica held up a hand. Silence. She could feel the air tighten, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Rex's fur bristled. He faced the door, body rigid, a silent warning. Suddenly, a rock smashed through the tiny glass window. Shards scattered across the floor. Chris yelped, diving away. Maria whimpered, shrinking farther into her jacket. Jessica ducked low, weapon drawn, scanning for the source. A voice boomed from outside, rough, echoing between the trees. "Come out, Ranger. This doesn't have to end badly. Hand over the girl." Jessica felt her blood go cold. They were surrounded. She pressed herself to the wall, eyes meeting Chris's. His fear was raw, but she saw determination flickering underneath. She nodded, and he took up a spot near the back door, old axe in hand. Jessica kept her own voice low. "Barricade the windows. Chris, grab that table." She didn't wait for protest. She and Chris jammed the splintered table against the main door, shoving chairs and crates against every weak spot they could find. Rex leapt onto the bench, barking furiously at the shattered window. Maria trembled, her breathing rapid. Jessica moved beside her, pressing a hand to her shoulder. "Stay low. Stay quiet. If anything happens, follow Rex. He'll get you out." Jessica tried to sound calm, but her heart hammered against her ribs. Memories clawing at her from the past. Another night, another siege, another promise to protect someone who didn't make it. Gunfire erupted outside, bullets punching holes in the walls, wood splintered. Maria screamed, ducking her head. Chris cursed, gripping the axe tighter. Jessica forced herself to think, to focus. Don't freeze, don't panic. She scanned the room for anything useful. Old lantern, metal rod, flare gun half buried in a crate. She shoved the flare gun into Chris's hands. "If they break through, blind them." Rex's barking turned savage. He leapt onto the window ledge, snapping at the dark. Jessica risked a glance outside. Shadows moved between the trees, figures, masked and armed, fanning out in a slow, careful circle. A single man strode forward, holding a rifle pointed at the cabin. Jessica's blood ran colder still. He wore a battered camo jacket, his face hidden behind a greasy scarf. His eyes, though, were fixed on her. Cold, familiar, cruel. "Jessica Collins!" the man shouted, voice mocking. "You can't hide. This is personal now. You remember me?" Jessica's breath caught. For a moment, the world spun. She did know him, from her past, from a mistake that haunted her. She forced her face into a mask, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her fear. Maria whimpered. "That's him. He's the one who hung me up there." Jessica's jaw clenched. "We're not giving up," she hissed. "No one's dying tonight." Bullets hit the door, rattling the makeshift barricade. Chris braced himself, sweat streaking down his face. Maria pressed her back to the wall, clutching Rex's fur. Jessica's mind raced. If they want Maria alive, they won't torch the place. But they'll try to break us down, force us out. She moved to the window, firing a warning shot into the sky. "This is federal land. Leave now and you might walk away." A rough laugh echoed back. "You've got 10 minutes, Ranger. Then we come in and drag you out." Jessica ducked back, breathing hard. She grabbed Chris's shoulder, steadying both of them. "Listen to me. No heroics. We buy time, wait for a break. If we get split up, head for the Old North Trail. Understand?" Chris nodded, jaw set. "I won't let them take her." Suddenly, Another barrage of bullets. One punched through a wall, sending splinters flying. Maria yelped, clutching her arm, a shallow cut, bleeding but not deep. Jessica ripped a strip from her shirt, tying it around Maria's arm, whispering reassurance. "We're getting out. You hear me? We're walking out of here together." Rex's barking never stopped. He leapt at the window, his presence buying them seconds every time a figure darted close. He was a wall of fur and teeth, every inch the hero Jessica knew him to be. The attackers outside shouted, trying to sow fear. "You think you can hide? You think your badge means anything out here?" Jessica ignored them, instead whispering to her team. "Rex will warn us if they breach. Chris, watch the back. Maria, if I say run, you run, no matter what." Then came silence, a thick, ominous hush. Even the birds seemed to sense the danger, holding their songs. A rock clattered off the roof. Rex spun, tracking the noise. Then, the main door shook, battered from the outside. The barricade groaned. Chris raised the axe, knuckles white. Jessica caught Maria's gaze, willing strength into her. "You're stronger than you think. You survived once. You'll do it again." Outside, the attackers regrouped. The man in the camo jacket called out again, voice full of malice. "This isn't just about her, Collins. It's about you, about what you did." Jessica's heart twisted. He was making this personal. He wanted her afraid, broken. She forced herself to remember every lesson she'd learned, every failure she'd survived. Not tonight. Not to him. The door shuttered again. Screws popped. Maria whimpered, but didn't run. Rex braced at Jessica's side, eyes locked on the enemy. "Hold on," Jessica whispered, voice steel. "No matter what." The first attacker tried the window. Rex exploded into action, snapping and snarling, forcing the man back with a yelp. Another attacker swung at the door, then another. The room seemed to shrink with every blow. Jessica felt something shift inside her, fear turning to fury. She wasn't going to be a victim. Not again. Not ever. "Come on!" she shouted through the wall. "You want to fight? You picked the wrong ranger." Outside, the attackers paused, thrown off by her defiance. Jessica glanced at her battered makeshift family. Chris, wide-eyed but brave. Maria, shaking but alive. Rex, unbreakable. She squared her shoulders, ready for the siege to truly begin. The battle for their lives wasn't over, but inside that little ranger station, hope flickered. A stubborn flame refusing to die. The world shrank to splinters and shadows. The battered ranger station trembled as another blow crashed against the barricaded door, each thud shaking dust from the rafters and sending splinters flying across the floor. Jessica's jaw clenched. She pressed her shoulder against the barricade, sweat stinging her eyes, every muscle in her body straining to keep the attackers out for just one more minute. Chris braced himself on the other side of the door, axe in hand, breathing in shallow bursts. Maria pressed herself into the far corner, clutching a chair leg so hard her knuckles bled. Rex prowled between them, fur bristled, every sense alert. The air inside felt thick, suffocating, as if the walls themselves were closing in. A crack split the air, this time the doorframe itself giving way. The attackers were relentless, pounding at the barricade with crowbars and rifle butts, shattering the false sense of security the little cabin had offered. Through the broken window, Jessica could see the masked faces outside, eyes wild, voices barking orders. This was no longer a threat. This was war, a deafening crash. The door burst open, a splintered table barely slowing the first man as he barreled through. Chris swung the axe with a cry, striking the intruder's arm. The man howled, staggering back, but two more attackers surged through the gap. Jessica moved on instinct, dropping to one knee, firing a warning shot into the ceiling. "Stay back!" she shouted, but the attackers barely flinched. One rushed her, swinging a pipe. She ducked, grabbed the man's wrist, and twisted, slamming him against the wall. Pain flared in her side, a glancing blow from the pipe, but she ignored it, adrenaline surging. Chris grappled with the man he'd wounded, the axe lost in the scramble. The two crashed into a cabinet, sending canned goods tumbling. Jessica saw blood on Chris's sleeve, but the rookie didn't back down. He fought with raw, desperate fury, every blow fueled by terror and resolve. Maria screamed as a third attacker lunged for her. Rex leapt, teeth flashing. The dog slammed into the man's chest, driving him to the floor. Rex's jaws closed around the attacker's arm, a deep, guttural snarl rising from his throat. The man shrieked, trying to shake Rex off, but the dog refused to let go. Jessica spun to help, but a fourth figure blocked her path, tall, masked, wielding a hunting knife. The attacker slashed at her, blade gleaming. Jessica dodged, grabbing a metal rod from the floor, parrying the knife. She kicked the attacker in the knee, driving him backward, then smashed the rod across his wrist. The knife clattered to the ground. For a moment, time slowed. Jessica saw Maria, crouched behind a toppled chair, blood streaking her face but her eyes alive with rage. She saw Chris, bleeding but still swinging, still fighting. She saw Rex, holding the attacker at bay, saving her life yet again. But more attackers were pouring in. Jessica's mind raced. We can't win this fight. She fired another shot, this time at the ceiling, splinters raining down. Back, she screamed, voice raw. Or the next one's for you. The threat worked. Two attackers hesitated, uncertain. Suddenly, a burst of gunfire from outside. Bullets ripped through the thin walls, thudding into cabinets, sending wood and insulation flying. Maria screamed, diving to the floor. Chris yanked her behind cover. Rex barked, refusing to retreat. Jessica's instincts screamed at her, protect them at all costs. She ducked behind the overturned table, counting her rounds, eyes scanning for escape. We're trapped. One attacker grabbed Maria by the hair, dragging her into the open. Jessica surged forward, rage blinding. She tackled the man, slamming him to the floor. He swung at her, but Rex was faster, teeth flashing, jaws snapping. The attacker howled, scrambling away. Jessica shoved Maria behind her. Stay down! Don't move! Her own fear was a living thing, roaring in her ears. For the first time, she turned to Rex, voice breaking. Stay, Rex! Stay! The dog froze, whining, but didn't budge from her side. It was chaos. Yelling, gunfire, bodies slamming into furniture. Chris caught a blow to the head, collapsing in a heap, blood trickling down his temple. Jessica dove to his side, pressing her hand to the wound, desperate. Chris, stay with me! Chris! His eyes fluttered, but he nodded, clutching her hand. Don't let them take her. Maria, sobbing, crawled to Jessica's other side. We have to run. We can't stay here. Jessica's mind spun, trapped, wounded, outnumbered. But then, a glimmer of hope. A masked man, one of the attackers, cornered by Rex and Maria. He was young, shaking, fear plain in his eyes. Jessica seized the moment. She pressed her gun to his chest. Talk, she growled. Who sent you? He stammered, terror making his words spill out. We're just the tip, just a small part. Orders come from way above. They said, if anyone talks, we're dead too. Jessica stared, heart hammering. Who's above? Who's giving the orders? The attacker only shook his head, tears streaming down his face. You have no idea. This is bigger than you think. Jessica turned to Chris and Maria, voice trembling but firm. We can't stay. The cabin's a death trap now. We move now. Gunfire erupted outside again, closer than before. Smoke drifted in through shattered walls, stinging their eyes. Jessica grabbed Chris, slinging his arm over her shoulder. Maria leaned on Rex, who refused to leave her side. The captured attacker, realizing he was outnumbered, cowered in the corner, mumbling about orders from above. Jessica made a split-second decision. She tore a strip from her jacket, tying the attacker's hands. "You're coming with us. You talk, or you burn with the rest." Together, battered and bloody, they stumbled toward the back door, Rex leading the way, every sense alive. Jessica clutching Chris, Maria limping behind. The burning cabin lit the forest in flickering orange, painting the trees with shadows. As they burst outside, choking on smoke, Jessica realized something deep and terrifying. This was bigger than revenge, bigger than corruption. It was a web, and they'd only just pulled the first thread. But she still had Rex, she still had Maria and Chris, and she still had fight left in her bones. Tonight, they would survive. The world behind them was burning, walls collapsing in a shower of embers, flames gnawing hungrily at wood and roof. Smoke boiled upward, thick and choking, curling through the towering trees of Olympic National Park. Jessica didn't have time to look back. She half-dragged, half-carried Chris away from the inferno, Chris limping heavily, his head lolling with every jolt. Maria staggered at her side, tears cutting streaks through the soot on her cheeks. One trembling hand gripping Rex's thick fur. The captured attacker, wrists tied, stumbled along, his eyes wild and darting, no longer threatening, just terrified. Gunfire crackled behind them, sporadic, angry, desperate. Someone shouted in rage. Jessica's only answer was the crunch of wet pine needles underfoot and the harsh gasp of her own breath. The burning cabin had become a beacon in the night, and every step into the smoky woods was a gamble between escape and ambush. "Rex, find the trail!" Jessica barked, voice ragged. Rex's ears pricked up. With a single commanding glance, he shot ahead, weaving through the fog and shadows, always doubling back to make sure his humans followed. He was more than a guide now. He was the only one Jessica trusted to see the way out. The group moved as one ragged, wounded animal, pushing through fallen logs, tripping on hidden roots, coughing in the dense, sooty haze. Jessica forced herself to ignore the pain in her shoulder, the sting of every bruise and scrape. Her entire focus was on the space in front of her, the need to keep everyone together, and the knowledge that time was slipping away. A sudden burst of gunfire split the night, bullets chopping into a nearby tree. Jessica yanked Maria down, pressing Chris flat to the ground. The captured attacker tried to bolt, but Rex intercepted him with a thunderous growl. The man crumpled, sobbing. "I don't want to die out here. Please let me go." Jessica glared, grabbing his collar and dragging him to his feet. "You wanted to hunt us? Now you're coming with us. Move." Her words were ice, her tone hard. She would not let fear paralyze her now. Chris's breath rasped in her ear. "Jess, I can't keep up." Jessica wrapped an arm tighter around his waist, half carrying him as she pushed through another wall of smoke. "You don't have to. Just don't let go of me, not now." They staggered on, weaving through a stand of burnt cedar and into a pocket of clearer air. Maria coughed violently, then straightened. "Look, over there!" Her finger trembled as she pointed through the fog. A break in the trees, a fire break wide as a road, blackened earth stretching in a corridor between the burning forest and the wild unknown. Jessica's pulse leapt. A fire break meant access to the main park road, a chance at escape, maybe even rescue. She looked down at Rex, who whined, glancing anxiously down the corridor. "Let's go," Jessica ordered, voice shaking but determined. "Keep low, stay together." They broke into a staggering run, feet pounding the soft black earth, lungs aching with every breath. The wind shifted, blowing a fresh wave of smoke across their path, and for a moment Jessica's vision blurred. She pushed on, dragging Chris, Maria gasping at her side. Rex darted ahead, then stopped, barking sharply. The road was in sight, maybe 50 yards ahead. Jessica felt hope for the first time in hours, a wild, desperate hope that tasted like blood and fear. She glanced back. Shadows moved in the smoke behind them, gunmen spreading out to cut them off. Her heart hammered. Not now, not when we're this close. A burst of gunfire tore through the firebreak. Jessica ducked, shoving Chris and Maria to the ground behind a fallen log. Bullets sprayed overhead, sending dirt flying. The captured attacker screamed, curling into a ball. Rex crouched beside Jessica, his body a living shield, his eyes fierce. Maria looked at Jessica, face stricken with terror. "What do we do? We're trapped." Jessica swallowed hard, thinking. She spotted a flash of metal, one of the gunmen, silhouetted by the burning forest, setting up a barricade ahead. There was no way through without being seen. Jessica's mind raced. If we wait, we die. If we run, someone gets hit. Unless... She pulled the flare gun from Chris's belt, loading it with shaking hands. "On my signal," she whispered. "We move as soon as the flare pops. Rex leads. No one stops, no matter what." Chris tried to nod. Maria squeezed Jessica's hand. Rex's muscles bunched, ready to bolt. Jessica rose, took aim, and fired. The flare shot high, exploding above the firebreak in a spray of brilliant red sparks. For an instant, the gunmen flinched, covering their eyes. Jessica screamed, "Now! Go!" They ran, Rex in the lead, Jessica hauling Chris, Maria sprinting beside her, the captured attacker stumbling after. Bullets tore the air, but the confusion bought them precious seconds. They burst through the last line of trees and spilled onto the road, panting, hearts hammering, bodies filthy and bloodied, but alive. On the edge of the firebreak, Maria stopped suddenly. "Wait! Look!" she cried, voice hoarse. She pointed up at a pine tree just off the road. Nailed to the trunk, half hidden by branches, was a tiny black camera, the lens blinking red. Jessica stared, her mind racing. Maria was right. Someone really is watching us. It's bigger than just a gang of thugs. There's a network, maybe even inside the Park Service itself. Behind them, more shouts rang out. Jessica grabbed Maria and Chris, dragging them onward. "No time!" she snapped. "Keep moving! Rex, find us cover!" They stumbled down the road, adrenaline carrying them, hope flickering despite exhaustion. The fire roared in the distance, painting the sky in violent orange and black. Maria clutched the hard drive under her jacket, evidence that might be the key to everything. Chris, battered but conscious, looked at Jessica. His voice shook. "I'm scared, Jess, but I trust you. I'd follow you anywhere." Jessica squeezed his hand. "We're getting out, I promise." As they disappeared into the smoky dawn, Jessica glanced back one last time. The forest burned, but the truth was burning brighter now, and she would not let it be snuffed out, no matter what darkness waited ahead. The morning light fought a losing battle against the smoke that still drifted through the trees, turning the world an eerie amber as Jessica and her battered group pressed on along the firebreak road. Every step felt like a test of will. Chris leaned heavily on Jessica, his breath ragged but steady. Maria clutched her hidden evidence to her chest, darting nervous glances over her shoulder. The captured attacker stumbled behind them, fear etched deep into his features, while Rex led the way, nose twitching, ears sharp for any sign of threat. It was Maria who first heard the crunch of gravel ahead. She froze, eyes wide. "Someone's there, listen." The others dropped low, hiding behind a tangle of brush at the road's edge. Jessica motioned for silence. Through the haze, she saw movement, a line of figures blocking the only clear way forward. At the head stood a man in a black balaclava, broad-shouldered and calm. His stance was military, his gaze unreadable. Behind him, 3 gunmen fanned out, weapons slung carelessly as if they were sure of victory. The road behind them was no safer, cut off by fire and smoke, the shouts of more pursuers echoing faintly in the woods. Jessica's stomach dropped. There was no more running. She checked the magazine in her sidearm, 3 rounds left. Chris squeezed her arm, whispering, "Whatever happens, I'm with you." Maria's hands trembled, but her jaw set in determination. Rex pressed close, muscles quivering with anticipation. The leader called out, his voice cold and smooth. "Ranger Collins, step out. You're surrounded, and I'd rather not waste ammunition on a dog and a couple of wounded civilians." Jessica stood, pulling herself upright with effort. "If you want Maria, you'll have to go through me." Her voice was steady, carrying over the smoldering air. She stepped onto the road, placing herself between the masked men and her friends. Rex flanked her, head lowered, a silent threat. The leader almost smiled. "You're brave, Collins. But bravery's not always enough. Why don't you hand over the girl and we all walk away?" Jessica shook her head. "You and your people are done. The evidence is safe. The world will know what you did." He nodded at his men, and they raised their rifles. "You're outnumbered. Surrender, and you might live." Maria's voice rang out, surprisingly strong. "You said you'd kill anyone who got in your way. I'm not running anymore. You want me? Here I am." She stepped onto the road beside Jessica, trembling but defiant. For a heartbeat, the world hung suspended, fire crackling behind them, guns glinting in the half-light. Rex growling low, then chaos exploded. The leader signaled, and his men advanced. Jessica fired, dropping the first gunman to his knees. Chris tackled another, taking a hit to the shoulder but refusing to let go. Maria ducked as bullets flew, grabbing a fallen branch and swinging wildly at the nearest attacker. Rex, a blur of muscle and fur, leapt for the leader, his jaws snapping shut on the man's arm, dragging him down. Jessica's world narrowed to flashes of violence, dodging, grappling, firing her last round. She smashed her pistol into the face of the man who rushed her. Feeling bone crunch beneath the blow, Maria screamed, not in terror, but in anger, as she wrestled with a gunman twice her size. Rex refused to let go of the leader, even as the man landed blow after blow. Chris, wounded but unstoppable, threw himself into the fray, using his weight to shield Maria and keep her from the line of fire. The captured attacker cowered at the edge, useless but harmless. Suddenly, the leader wrenched free of Rex, staggering back with a bloodied arm. He raised his gun at Jessica, eyes burning with hate. "You never should have come back, Collins. Don't you know who set all this in motion? Someone you trusted. Someone waiting for you to fail." Jessica blinked, stunned. "What are you talking about?" The leader only sneered, pulling the trigger. The gun clicked. Empty. Rex seized the opening, hurling himself at the leader's legs, knocking him off balance. Jessica lunged, tackling him to the ground. They grappled in the dirt, the leader snarling, "You're just like your father, trusting the wrong people." The words cut deeper than any wound, but Jessica pushed through, pinning him down as Maria kicked the weapon away. Chris, pale and shaking, grabbed the leader's radio, calling out, "We need help! Shots fired! Ranger down!" The static-filled reply was barely audible, but it was enough. For a moment, there was only the sound of heavy breathing and crackling flames. Maria, battered but defiant, stood over the fallen men. "It's over," she spat. "You can't bury the truth anymore." The leader's laugh was bitter. Truth, there's always someone else. You think this ends with me? Jessica looked down at him, eyes fierce. Maybe not, but it ends with you today. Sirens wailed in the distance. Backup, finally, drawn by Chris's call or the gunfire, or maybe just by luck. The leader fell silent, glaring at Jessica, Maria, and Chris as they stood together in the smoky dawn. Maria hugged Jessica, sobbing into her shoulder. You came back for me. You didn't have to. Why? Jessica closed her eyes, the answer pouring out. Because I know what it's like to feel alone, and I never want anyone to feel that way. Not if I can help it. Chris sank to his knees, exhausted. Rex limped to Jessica's side, tongue lolling, eyes bright. Together, bruised but alive, they waited for the world to come back into focus. Jessica looked at the horizon, the sun breaking through smoke. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was choosing to fight, not only for justice but for the people who needed her most. And as the law arrived and the bad men fell, the secrets of the forest began to unravel, one hard-won truth at a time. The sun was just beginning to rise over the Olympic forest, its rays struggling through drifting smoke, painting the horizon in streaks of gold and violet. Jessica, Maria, Chris, and Rex sat together on a rough log by the edge of the blackened road, their bodies battered, their clothes torn and stained. But for the first time since the nightmare began, they were safe. The remnants of chaos, scattered shell casings, footprints in the ash, the burnt skeleton of the ranger station, lay behind them, silent witnesses to a night that had changed everything. Jessica looked down at her hands, which trembled despite her best efforts to appear strong. She could still feel the heat of the fire, the press of bodies in the fight, the sting of every wound. Rex lay beside her, his thick fur matted with dirt and a few specks of blood, eyes half closed but still alert. The big shepherd pressed his head gently against her knee, a silent anchor in the swirl of emotion. Chris sat on the other side of Rex, a crude bandage wrapped around his shoulder, his head tilted back, staring at the light breaking through the trees. He didn't speak, but his breathing had slowed, the panic and pain of the night gradually giving way to relief. Occasionally, he'd reach down and pat Rex's side, as if needing to reassure himself that they had really made it. Maria sat closest to Jessica, her arms wrapped tight around herself, rocking slightly. She'd stopped crying, but her eyes were red, her face streaked with grime and tears. For a while, none of them said anything. The silence was heavy, not with fear, but with the exhaustion that follows survival, a silence that asked its own questions. Finally, Maria broke it with a whisper. "Why did you come back for me, Jessica? You could have run. You could have saved yourself." Jessica turned, surprised by the rawness of the question. She hesitated, searching for the words. "Because I know what it's like to feel alone," she said softly, her voice cracking. "And I never want anyone to feel that way if I can help it. Not ever again." Maria stared at her, tears welling up again, but this time from gratitude. She reached out and took Jessica's hand, squeezing it tight. In that touch, Jessica felt something shift inside her, a release, as if some of the weight she'd carried for years had finally lifted. Chris cleared his throat, his voice quiet but steady. "You saved us, Jess. All of us. I don't think I could have made it if you weren't there." He looked away, embarrassed, but the truth of it lingered in the air. Jessica shook her head. "I didn't do it alone. We all got each other through this." She looked down at Rex, who wagged his tail softly, content just to be near his humans. "And Rex, I don't know if I'd still be standing without him. He saved me more times than I can count." The group fell into silence again, but it was a softer, more peaceful quiet. Jessica allowed herself, for the first time in years, to just be, to let go of the relentless need to always be strong, to always be in control. Tears tracked down her face and she didn't hide them. She thought about all the nights she'd spent alone in these woods, patrolling with Rex as her only company, pushing everyone else away because she was afraid her scars would make her unfit to protect anyone. Now, looking at Maria, at Chris, at Rex lying with his head in her lap, Jessica realized how wrong she'd been. Connection wasn't a weakness. It was the only thing that had kept them alive. Maria spoke, voice steadier now. I thought exposing the truth would be enough, that if people knew, things would change. But I was so scared. When they grabbed me, when I thought I'd die out there, I kept thinking about all the things I never said, the people I never got to thank. Jessica squeezed her hand. You're here now. That's what matters. Chris looked at them, his eyes tired but full of a newfound respect. I used to think being tough meant never being afraid. But now, I think it's about showing up, even when you are afraid. Trusting people, letting yourself care even if it hurts. Jessica smiled, a bittersweet smile. We've all got scars. We've all lost things, but if we let that stop us, nothing ever gets better. She looked around at the burned forest, the traces of violence and loss. What happened here wasn't just a fight with a few bad men. It was a fight against everything that tries to make us hide, to make us give up on each other. She paused, thinking of all the times she'd doubted herself, all the times she'd pushed others away. We survived because we trusted each other, because we let ourselves be seen. Even Rex, maybe especially Rex, he never gives up on anyone. Maria smiled through her tears, her grip on Jessica's hand tightening. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Chris, usually awkward and unsure, managed a small grin. He reached over and scratched Rex behind the ears. Guess you're the real hero here, huh, buddy? Rex thumped his tail, closing his eyes in simple, honest joy. Jessica looked up at the rising sun, feeling its warmth for the first time in what felt like years. She realized that, despite the pain, despite the fear and the loss, she was still here, still fighting. And for the first time, she wasn't alone. The lesson was clear, not just for her, but for anyone willing to listen. The battle is never just with the monsters outside, but with the ones inside, the shame, the fear, the urge to shut others out. Real strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about being willing to risk your heart, to reach out, to let others in. As the day grew brighter, Jessica knew she'd never be the same, and she was finally okay with that. The whir of sirens rose steadily, echoing through the battered woods as law enforcement vehicles arrived, blue and red lights flashing through the smoke-streaked trees. Jessica watched in silence as Maria was gently led to an ambulance, paramedics wrapping her in a blanket, checking her pulse, asking quiet questions. Chris leaned heavily against the tailgate of a rescue truck, eyes half closed but safe, while Rex lay on the ground at Jessica's feet, finally allowing himself to rest. He was exhausted but proud, his gaze never straying far from his human. Deputies swarmed the scene, securing the battered suspects, hauling away the attackers in handcuffs. The masked leader was silent now, his earlier bravado gone, his eyes fixed on Jessica with a venom that was more tired than angry. He said nothing as they loaded him into the back of a squad car, but Jessica felt the weight of his final words. This isn't over. There's always someone else. Sarah, the enigmatic senior ranger with salt and pepper hair and an air of quiet authority, appeared beside Jessica. She rested a hand on Jessica's shoulder, her grip steady and warm. You did good, Jess. You kept your head, You saved lives tonight." Jessica nodded, still feeling the adrenaline's aftershocks shuddering through her body. "It wasn't just me. It was Chris, Maria, Rex. We made it together." Sarah's eyes softened. That's how it always is. No one survives alone. She glanced around at the police, the paramedics, the charred remains of the ranger station. "You know, I've been offered a spot with a federal task force. They're putting together a team. People who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty for the truth. People with heart. I want you to join us." Jessica looked out over the dawn-lit forest, considering the offer. For years she had pushed people away, believing solitude made her stronger, safer. But this night had changed her. The courage to trust, to reach out, to let others in, had become her greatest strength. "Maybe," she said quietly, "but I won't leave this park unless someone's here to watch over it. These woods, they need protecting, and so do the people who love them." Sarah smiled, approving. "Think about it. We need more folks like you." As the emergency crews worked, Jessica found a quiet spot at the edge of the clearing and sat down, drawing Rex close. She rested her hand on his head, scratching gently behind his ear as the early sun warmed her face. Her mind wandered to the scars she'd hidden for years, the guilt of old failures, the shame of not being able to save everyone. She remembered every night she'd walked these trails alone, thinking her solitude was a shield. But Rex had always been there, silent and steady, never judging, always ready to lean into her pain with wordless loyalty. She watched as Maria, bandaged but alive, hugged one of the detectives, pressing the hard drive with her evidence into his hands. Maria caught Jessica's gaze, mouthed, "Thank you," then turned to begin the long process of healing, a process Jessica now understood wasn't about forgetting, but about finding purpose in the pain. Chris wandered over, wincing as he lowered himself to sit beside Jessica and Rex. "They'll patch me up," he said with a weak grin, "but I don't think I'll ever forget tonight." "You're not supposed to," Jessica replied. "If we forget, we stop caring, and that's how the bad things keep happening." Chris nodded, thoughtful. He watched as the sunrise brightened, the gold filtering through the ruined trees. "You know, I used to think the hardest part of this job was the danger. But it's not. It's not letting the danger make you cold." Jessica smiled at him. Really smiled. For the first time in what felt like years. "That's why Rex is the heart of this team. He never gives up on people." Rex thumped his tail at his name, nudging Jessica's hand, reminding her of the simple, enduring power of loyalty. As the last ambulance pulled away and the forest settled into a new, raw silence, Jessica reflected on all that had changed. The core value at the center of her journey burned brighter than ever. The most profound strength was not in isolation, or toughness, or never letting anyone in. It was in the willingness to love, to risk heartbreak, and to stand up for others, especially when it was hardest to do so. She stood, looking over the landscape of destruction and rebirth, Rex at her side. The sun was full and bright now, and the world, for all its danger and heartbreak, felt wide open again. Her story, and the story of that night, was a message to anyone who would listen. Embrace your scars. They are proof you survived. Don't turn away from those who are hurting. Your presence matters more than you know. Allow yourself to trust, to connect, to love fiercely, because healing is never a solitary journey. Jessica took a deep breath and made a silent promise to herself and to Rex, to never run from her fears again, to show up for others the way she wished someone had shown up for her all those years ago. As she walked away from the scene, a renewed sense of hope filled her. The world was still dangerous, still uncertain, but she was no longer running from it. She was running toward it, heart open, scars and all. Real courage isn't about being unbreakable. It's about being willing to be whole, together, no matter how many times life tries to break you. Show up, forgive, reach out, and let yourself be seen. In the end, what matters is not how tough you are, but how deeply you love, and how bravely you let others love you back. With Rex at her side, Jessica faced the sunrise, ready for whatever came next. The forest was quiet again, and for the first time, so was she.